I think people didn't realize I was going through it as I was on Telegram talking to everybody because I didn't talk about it very much while it was happening, unless I was writing about it on my channel. But I don't think people really understand what happened to this entire continent. It was like living through the Red Terror. Uh, so uh, we previously had a federated Commonwealth where all of the states cooperated as though they're one country. In 2020, the states practically declared themselves sovereign political entities, and the governments of each state began to run the states as though they were um, completely independent city states. And this seemed to have worked well in America, but in Australia it was catastrophic because we have a very interconnected social system here. I mean, most people will have family in different states. Most people will travel for work in different states at some stage. A lot of rural communities are living where their town, village, or their small city is literally on top of state borderlines, and the border runs right through, and they've got to travel across the border for work every morning and then come back home into another state in the afternoon. So when this happened, suddenly people were cut off from extended families, from hospital services, from work, from their neighbors. Just everything was completely interrupted. And for the first time, for quite some time, Australians were required to operate as though they lived in a state and not in a country. And they started to talk to us as though we lived in states instead of within the Commonwealth of Australia. And for anyone paying attention, certain states were a little better than others. We had some world-class public health measures implemented, and Australia's got the gold medal for lockdown rates of
Well, you
lockdown
had
anywhere on
had
earth. Like, it was worse in
helicopters
Brazil.
and dogs and
Yeah.
I mean horses being raced. I mean, you showed me
Yes.
footage from different parts of the country, so I do have
Mm.
seen some of that. But the kind of, I mean, we had the street protests in 2020, but they had nothing to do with the coronavirus lockdowns. They were about
Yes.
BLM, right? With the irony of why is everybody out there in these giant street protests, and
Yes.
apparently we can't go to church.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, all the churches were closed. Liturgy was suspended. The priests were organizing liturgies and broadcasting them. They were live streaming the liturgies, but we weren't allowed to step foot on church property for a very long time. So stories from different states and how wacky everything got. At one stage, the Australian state of Victoria, that had decided to lock down everybody, put them in their 8 p.m. curfew with a 1 hour exercise allocation per day per person. It closed every business except for supermarkets and medical facilities, emergency medical facilities. Gyms were closed, everything was closed, but the brothels were open. So churches were closed, brothels were open. I'm not really sure what that says about what constitutes an essential worker or not anymore. I mean, it was like hilarious kind of they to anyone who was actually paying attention to those kinds of things, and a lot of people were, they were horrified because the Christian community just wanted to go to church and pray for everybody to make sure everybody was safe.
Right.
And of course, a lot of them were quite happy to congregate safely, but they were prohibited from doing this. So I don't really know how you can go and visit a brothel and social distance
Well, I mean, the
and
social
stay
distance,
sterile.
all
I
of these,
mean,
we also knew from the beginning all of these measures were silly. I mean,
yes, yes.
the masks and the social distancing and the, oh, we'll just try everything, and the, I mean, yeah, except for the medicines that were people were saying would actually help. I mean, that it's like I don't want to like land too hard on Oster because everybody has for the last 3 days, and of course,
Mm,
when she these, let's declare a pandemic amnesty, right? And we have all the headlines and the the tweets and stuff that she's put out over the past couple of years. Apparently, she got in
mm.
some trouble by saying, "Oh, maybe we should open up schools or something." But the the claim that, oh, we didn't know and everybody was just trying out whatever could possibly work at the time. I mean, I've had um you know one of my family members was saying to me, it's like, wasn't it interesting they suddenly had all those stickers to stick on the floors in the airports very, very quickly that all were
Yeah.
6 feet apart. And it's like, okay, so the sort of rollout of the containment measures seems to have been a little smooth for something that people were just trying.
Oh yeah. Oh, they erected permanent street signage across the country in
Wow.
Australia. It's still up.
Yeah.
They're still advertising. No one's taken the signs down, which is bizarre. I mean, I grew up in the generation of graffiti artistry
Yeah.
where there was no flat surface that was safe, um, and no one's touched them. It's very, very strange. There's this kind of feeling of um, it all being very sacred and hallowed, and you can't touch the signage even though everybody's back to normal. It's
They
just a
won't take
very,
the
very
signs.
strange thing.
So the
They're
chat
not taking the signs down, no.
the chat is asking Mike 1000, what made Australia lock down so hard? I mean, this is the Oster is here in the States saying, we were just
Mm.
trying, we were innocent, we didn't know it was this, this massive uncertainty. But did it feel like it was out of uncertainty in Australia?
No, 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 it didn't. If it was a feeling of uncertainty, they would have seen what they were doing to the population and stopped.
Yeah.
Uh, I posted on this the other day, as you know, and I said that I'm not going to blame the government because it's not the government's fault, which is going to piss everybody off. It's not the government's fault. It was the bureaucracy that did it. Public servants absolutely got behind the most draconian, anti-social, anti-life interventions you could ever imagine and refused to bend with any degree of elasticity, even though it was destroying people's lives. It wasn't a whoopsie, like, oh, whoops, we just don't know how to contain this little virus. Uh, I mean, imagine being a boring person stuck behind a desk job who never has any power, and then all of a sudden, everything you say has effect on everybody else around you. That's what happened in Australia. We have very egalitarian culture here, and there isn't anything like an acknowledged class system in this country. We've never really had aristocracy. I mean, we've never had a kingdom, even though we've got a royal as a sovereign of the Commonwealth. But in terms of the way that things work here, convict attitude's always been very anti-authoritarian. So we don't really like it when people are, they get too big for their boots, or like we don't like tall poppies. We have tall poppy syndrome.
Right.
So even if someone is a multi-millionaire, they keep it very quiet. We don't really like people ordering everyone else around based on status. What happened in COVID was like, I think, unrealized desires for some kind of social hierarchy that people have been denying exists for a long time.
That is very interesting.
Yeah,
that is very interesting.
Yeah, because it was like plebeians and patricians.
Yeah.
It really was. And then the equine class, which is always forgotten about in Rome.
Mm-hmm.
I like the equine class. but the police horses were the equine
Well,
class.
they are. They're knights.
And
Yeah. Very
yeah,
good point.
yeah, and they were the ones that were sent out to stifle any kind of public protest to any of the lockdown measures. So why things got so crazy in Australia? I really think that the people here were hungry for some kind of hierarchical and authoritarian approach to ordering everyone else around that they can't admit to. They can't scratch the itch, and they did very much scratch that itch. Um, People were crying, setting themselves on fire. People immolated themselves, two separate people, um, in one state. I know several people drove their cars into the ocean off piers. What else happened? So I can't even think.
Well, so
Like
this
I
is
can't even remember it
that I
all.
started saying that I could tell this was coming because I was studying the French Revolution,
Mm,
and what I described to you, what happens in 1789, that summer, it's like they have this election to bring the Estates General together, which is, you know, the representative government in the old style, which they haven't done for 150 years or more. And
okay.
they have to elect the representatives of the clergy, the representatives of the nobility, and then the estate, the third estate. And you know they go through this big, you know, process of electing their representatives. They end up with a lot of lawyers. um,
Mm,
and they all come, the delegates all come to Versailles, and they're meeting in the royal palace in different rooms and so forth. And you know, by way of different things that happen over the course of that summer, including, you know, the storming of the Bastille, which is complicated and odd, and heads on pikes and stuff like that. They get to this point in August when they're hearing about all these riots and food shortages and, you know, breakdown of order and such out in the countryside. And on the night of August 4th, suddenly all of the delegates, by now they've reconstituted themselves as something other than those three estates, but they all come together and the nobility start giving up their titles to privilege.
mm,
Right, it's like the effervescence of the night of August 4th is one is usually described as not the storming of the Bastille, but this night of August 4th is the origins of the true revolution, which is the overthrow of this this social structure that they weren't even aware of being. There had been, you know, protest against what was the third estate, and, you know, what was the nation, and questions about that before they convened, but nobody was planning on completely, you know, overturning the entire social structure. And
okay.
what you're describing is, it's almost, it's like reverse. It's like we ended
Yes.
up with this incredible equalitarian social structure, which indeed makes people unhappy for different reasons. Let's
Yes.
explore this. Madame Defarge, the original Karen, Casey. Well, and she's fictional thanks to, you know, Dickens, but yes, Madame Defarge sitting there knitting the names into her knit. I only remember that from Tale of Two Cities. Um, there's something about, it's like we have just witnessed some kind of reorganization of the social hierarchy.
Yes. Very
That
much
makes
so.
sense. And we're watching it with like the overthrow of the institutions of trust in science, in academia, in not so much in business. I'm not sure where we're going with that one. The academics like Oster, we you know, they kind of blew it because
Mm,
they were too confident in their statistical crystal balls and not students of enough history.